Caravan to Midnight, episode 751. Wow. Unbelievable. Thank you very much for making this possible. We got a good deal coming up for you in a few minutes. We're going to speak with Joseph Meyer for just a few minutes, and I think you'll enjoy hearing him. Joseph is a very level-headed student of finance for several decades. I mean, like several with a capital S. Well, it's real stupid out there, don't you find? It really is. President Trump's decided he's not going to have anything to do with this Paris Climate Accord. Of course, Obama's flipping out because his so-called legacy is being dismantled, as well it should be. I would like for somebody to just tell me one thing, other than being half black and being elected president, that this guy actually accomplished. And more to the point, what he did at any point in his life, or his entire life taken in whole, to deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. I don't think the Nobel Committee did itself any favors by giving him one. If they wanted to give one to the United States of America for being colorblind and non-racist and all that stuff, that would have been one thing. We're going to give America. Yep, the United States of America, we're going to give them the Nobel Peace Prize. Here you go. But no, they give it to Barack Obama. What a joke. And then yesterday on Drudge Report, they're staying. The house that they've been renting in Washington, D.C., they've decided that because the children need to be there for another 2.5 years, they're going to actually buy the house. Duh. Well, did we really think he was going to leave? Number one, where was he going to go? Back to Kenya? Or was it Hawaii? Or was it Indonesia? As far as I'm concerned, as long as he doesn't get too much TV time, we're good. In the meantime, the European president says, Achtung, Achtung, America first won't happen. Now this is Alex Pfeiffer, Daily Caller. Jean-Claude Juncker, president of the European Commission, reacted angrily to reports that President Donald Trump is set to withdraw from the Paris Climate Change Accord. That's not how it works. The Americans can't just leave the climate protection agreement, he said. Yeah, Trump believes that because he doesn't get close enough to the dossiers to fully understand them, it would take 3 to 4 years after the agreement came into force in November 2016 to leave the agreement. So this notion, I am Trump, I am American, America first, and I'm going to get out of it, that won't happen. We tried to explain that to Mr. Trump in Taormina, in clear German sentences. It seems our attempt failed, but the law is the law, and it must be obeyed. Not everything which is the law, and not everything in international agreements is fake news, and we have to comply with it. Yeah, watch and see, Juncker. We're leaving. It's bogus. It's BS. Now, get this. This character, named Tom Steyer, S-T-E-Y-E-R, Trump's Paris exit is a traitorous act of war. Billionaire climate activist Tom Steyer called President Trump a traitor if he makes good on his promise and exits the Paris Climate Change Agreement. And this is what he says. He tweeted this. If Trump pulls the U.S. out of the hashtag Paris Agreement, he will be committing a traitorous act of war against the American people. My statement. The Paris Agreement is essential to leaving a healthy, safe, and prosperous world to our children, but Trump is making it clear that he's willing to sacrifice America's best interests for the sake of special interest profits. Generations of Americans will suffer the destructive effects of Trump's greedy, selfish, and immoral decision. We cannot underestimate the degree to which Trump is weakening America's position in the world. Trump has abdicated American leadership and sent a clear message to both our allies and enemies alike. In the search for courageous and moral solutions to the challenges, blah, 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 blah. Here's another one. With Trump hell-bent on giving corporate polluters free rein to poison our air and water, states and cities must lead the way. States like California, Minnesota, and New York have already joined the Under 2 MOU, a coalition of governments committed to upholding our commitment to limit emissions. As in line with the Paris Agreement, more local governments must join them in putting clean air and water, a healthy climate, ahead of polluters' profits. Oh, time is running out, and now it's up to state and local leaders to protect their citizens from Trump, the fossil fuel. Well, let's just find out about Tom Steyer, shall we? He was born in Manhattan in '57. His mother was a teacher of remedial reading at the Brooklyn House of Detention. His father, Roy Steyer, was a partner in the New York law firm of Sullivan and Cromwell. Steyer attended the Buckley School, Phillips Exeter Academy, graduated Yale University in economics and political science degrees, was elected to Phi Beta Kappa, captain of the Yale soccer team, got an MBA from Stanford Business School. After graduating from Yale, he began his professional career at Morgan Stanley. 2 years at Morgan Stanley, then went to Harvard Business School. He was accepted there, but instead he decided to go to the Stanford Business School, worked at Goldman Sachs, founded Farallon Capital, an investment firm headquartered in San Francisco. Oh, you'll love this. In October 2012, he stepped down from his position at Farallon in order to focus on advocating for alternative energy. He decided to dispose of his carbon-polluting investments in 2012, although critics say he did not dispose of them fast enough, and noted that the lifespan of the facilities he funded would extend through 2030. Prior to Steyer leaving Farallon, a student activist group called Un-Farallon criticized the company for investments in companies with anti-environmental policies. In 2016, some critics noted that Farallon had also invested in private prisons while Steyer was leading the hedge fund. According to SEC filings, Steyer was at the helm as the hedge fund purchased nearly $900 million worth of Corrections Corporation of America stock. After leaving Farallon, Steyer hosted a two-day think tank titled Big Think Climate Meeting to discuss how to address climate change. So in other words, here are some other comments. You'll enjoy these about Mr. Steyer. Apparently, one of the comments is that it's hard to come up with anybody who made more money from thermal coal. But now I suppose his bank account's nice and fat. He's become a man of conscience and has decided to save the world. It's the typical hypocrisy of the left. Absolutely, positively. Now, over there in ISIS is at it again. I don't know if you're interested in this or not, but it is interesting that it's happening, and we were told it's going to be happening. It's going to happen all over, all over. Vatican looked like it was on fire earlier today, but back to the terrorists. Gunmen stormed through a tourist resort in Manila. Guests are fleeing as explosions are going off, and ISIS strikes again. And then, if you look over here at ChicagoTribune.com, a teenage girl from Chicago, she's been charged with killing an Uber driver, randomly, attacking the man with a knife and a machete she just stolen from a Walmart. Eliza Wozni, 16. She only spoke in court to identify herself. She called Nelson a random victim. Nelson was the Uber driver. Unbelievable. Was this just a random act? She goes to Walmart, steals a knife and a machete, then takes 2 Uber rides. She's 16, supposed to be 18 to ride Uber. But I'm sure that's a real big deal. She violated their policy, I suppose, by being underage and taking an Uber. And then just kills the guy. No reason whatsoever for doing it. Just a random slaying. Let's see now. For May 30, this is interesting. Gold-backed currency launches where? In Dubai. New gold-backed currency. It's called 1 gram. Backed by 1 gram of gold using blockchain technology, it's the first in a wave of new Sharia, tech-savvy gold products. Sharia, S-H-A-R-I-A-H, that's it. 2017 sees big changes for gold thanks to Sharia gold and blockchain. Gold investors should prepare for tightening in supply. Ramadan Kareem rang out across Dubai and the rest of the Muslim world over the weekend as the holiest month in the Islamic calendar began. For 29 through 30 days, over 1 billion Muslims around the world practice Sawm, S-A-W-M, charity, and Salat, fasting, charity, and prayer. This period is a time of spiritual reflection, increased devotion and worship, as well as a time to come together with loved ones for both the break-fast meal and the pre-fast meal. Well, anyway, as part of the celebrations, a new gold-backed currency has been launched right there in Dubai. It's a new currency known as 1 gram, backed by 1 gram of gold, can be used for digital payments. There's a fixed number of OGCs and digital transaction fees, minus administration costs, of course. That'll be reinvested to buy more gold. According to the managers, the amount of gold backing each OGC will increase with time. 1 gram has been launched by a private company of the same name. The company claims to offer a proof-of-stake blockchain that is further anonymized than Bitcoin. Reports state that developers employ zero-knowledge dual-key stealth addresses and ring signature protocols toward instant, untraceable, unlinkable, trustless transactions. Whew. Wow. Unbelievable, but true. James Comey is set to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee on the 8th of June. Be nice to get that behind us, won't it? And let's see what else. Anything good? Anything good in there? Yeah, even the mosquitoes are getting wild. An apocalyptic swarm of mosquitoes hits LaGuardia. I presume that's the airport. Yep. Walmart employees are being asked to deliver packages on the way home as Amazon overpowers them. San Diego, looks like they're on the earthquake hit list. Their risk of earthquake has increased. And let's see, what else? Anything good? Oh yeah, I know you've heard this already, but Nigel Farage has now become a person of interest to the FBI. We're going to speak with George Webb here in a little bit. Now listen, I got to tell you, if you remember the old Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons, every once in a while, I think it was Bullwinkle, yeah, it was Bullwinkle, would get with Mr. Wizard, and he'd go and have a misadventure. And then he'd be spinning in a kaleidoscope surround, saying, Mr. Wizard, I want to go home. Oh. That's kind of what this interview is going to be like. Because George has got so much information in his head, and it's all trying to come out at the same time. So I'll try to keep it linear, but I can't guarantee that I can. But in any case, what you're about to hear from George Webb regarding the deep state is a lot of stuff that you've long suspected and maybe heard about for a long time, but George is on the move now. He's not really in a position to stay in one place very long, which is what happens when you decide to go out there on the clothesline and begin telling the truth about things and investigating things, that there are powerful individuals and groups that simply don't want you asking questions, don't want you investigating anything. Remember, Wolfgang Halbig was approached by homicide detectives at his home and said, they're going to arrest you if you don't stop asking questions. Who? Connecticut. What are homicide detectives here in Florida doing by coming to the house and telling me I'm going to be arrested if I don't stop asking questions? Well, that's the way of things now, I suppose. It doesn't seem, it just doesn't seem normal, does it? Well, that's because it isn't. One last thing. There's a study here. This is posted on Vessel News, curated by Josh Kaplan, and written by phys.org, phys.org. And the title is, Study, U.S. Cities Have Worse Inequality Than Mexico. The cities of the Americas are unequal places. U.S. Census data and recent American community surveys show that in most modern American metropolises, resources are unevenly distributed across the city. Think New York City's Lower Manhattan versus the South Bronx, with residents enjoying unequal access to jobs, unequal access to transportation, and unequal access to public spaces. In 2014, New York City's GINI inequality index was 0.48, meaning that income distribution was even less in New York City than in the U.S. as a whole. 0.39. It was also higher than the most unequal OECD countries, Chile, 0.46, Mexico, 0.45. Latin America, which is the world's most unequal place, is also by far the most urbanized region of the globe. More than 80% of the population lives in large cities. Well, no matter where you live, measuring inequality is tricky because its incidence and extent changes in different parts of the city. Or pardon me, make that extent. Sure, there are rich neighborhoods and poor ones. High-income and low-income households sort themselves across cities according to preference, for public schools and neighborhood composition and needs according to budget, job location, and housing prices. But it's interesting to note that U.S. cities have worse inequality than Mexico, where I suspect the misery is spread a little more evenly. If this were not the case, then why would millions of people from Mexico be coming to the United States over the border, just, rushing the border, like teenagers rushing the gate at a rock concert or something? Crazy. All right. Well, it's been a little while since we've spoken with Joseph Meyer, but we want to, I was going to say, does he, but I will say, do we have a deal for you? Hey, Joseph, how are you?
How are you, John? How have you been?
Pretty good, pretty good. Can't complain. Better than I deserve. You know what I mean?
You deserve the best, John.
Well, I just hope it's not that William Money thing. Hope it's not that William Money thing about. I think it is. The William Money thing is depicted by Clint Eastwood. Deserve has got nothing to do with it. You know that thing. But I appreciate the sentiment. Hey, listen, this is a. Thanks for coming on, of course, and I'm really excited about this thing that you wanted to do with us, and you and Ms. B got together.
We're going to take it one step further. Let me share this quickly with you, John. I just spoke to Brendy a few minutes ago, and we went over the promotion, and I think it's great. And for $80 a year, they're going to get a 1-year subscription to Caravan and Midnight and 2 issues of straight money analysis. Yeah. As you know, I said to Brendy, we give them the March 2017 along with the June 2017 for anybody who became a subscriber to the newsletter. I'm also going to throw in as an additional kicker and a bonus the September 2017 when I write it, John.
Oh, man. That's great. That's folks, this really is good. That would be $209.95. So, forget about the nickel, call it $210. And it's $80 for a year. You get a year subscription to Caravan to Midnight, and you get those newsletters that Joseph just talked about. This is excellent. And it's I tell people all the time, I talk to a lot of money guys. I do.
I know you do.
But I tell everybody the same thing, and it's that, and whenever somebody comes on, I always toss your name into the ring and make sure that your name is included among those that are like the luminaries out there, because you are one of the luminaries out there. And the thing is that you don't scare people with your stuff. You don't say, oh, this is going to crater and this is going to go through the roof. You don't do that stuff. You just tell them, look, this is how it is. This is what has happened historically, and based on these algorithms that you've spent, 40 years? Over 40 years, I guess.
50 years, John.
Okay, 50 years. Yeah, wow. You've been doing this since Sgt. Pepper's came out by the Beatles? Good grief.
Absolutely.
Well, you haven't missed yet. And nobody said, oh, that Joe Meyer, he really called it wrong. I mean, correct me if I'm mistaken, but I don't think you've missed yet.
No, I haven't, John.
So there it is. And think about it as, I'll also say this, and I mean, I'm not flattering you at all. You're not real vocal about it. You don't go out there beating your chest going, I have never been wrong, and I. You just don't do that. So we're going to do it.
I know who I am, John, and I know what I've accomplished in my long career, and I'm proud of it. And as I've often said, the only thing you have to prove to yourself is who you are at the end of the day, and I think I've done that.
I think you have too. So let me ask you this. I see the stock market went through another record high yesterday. This is really worrisome. What are we going to see, a 30,000 Dow one of these days, or what?
I think it's a pipe dream. I don't think we're going to see 30,000 in the Dow, John. I think this market is very tired. I think it's very overextended. And as I've said in the previous shows we've done together, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when we begin this long overdue and very nasty bear market. You know, you got people in this market, and I think it's ridiculous. It's the equivalent of picking up nickels in front of a steamroller. The upside in this market, and I'll say it again, go on the record, I think is limited. I think the downside is great. I think it's time to use this strength. It's an additional gift, raise some cash, take money off the table, and prepare for lower prices. We may struggle through the remainder of the summer, but as I had written in the latest issue of the newsletter, historically, if you go all the way back and you look at history, John, the 2 months where we've seen the most significant corrections in the equity markets have been in the month of either May or October. So we've gotten through May, but I'm hopeful we can possibly get through October and maybe into the end of the year. But quite frankly, at this point, I doubt it, John.
I keep hearing the month of September come up over and over again, which is the one right next to October. So, I mean, if something popped on October 1 and people were keeping their eyes peeled for what's happening in September, well, duh, that's close enough.
September has always been, in my long career, a very pivotal month in the stock market. Usually when we begin a bear market and or a very nasty, long overdue correction, it usually takes place after people return back from the Labor Day weekend, John.
Yeah, a lot of crazy stuff happens in September and October. Actually, August, September, and October, as far as a warfare and financial misery is concerned. You know, those are the months. I don't know why that is. Maybe it is written, and a lot of people didn't read it. So I see the automobile industry is struggling. Communications companies are struggling, and yet houses are outrageously high. What do you see as the biggest? What's the biggest bubble? Housing again?
Well, I think it's housing without a doubt. These houses are too high for the average American to afford, John. We still haven't created on balance, and I know I sound like a broken record, the decent paying jobs that will allow you to support a household. We haven't done it. Yes, we've created jobs, but they're not of the quality of the jobs that we've seen all through history that allowed you to buy a home. When you talk about wages, and you and I touched on this in a previous show, if you go back and you look at wages adjusted for inflation, people haven't had a raise since 1965, John. It's crazy.
You know, it's really strange. And I mean, I hesitate to throw this into the mix, but I guess I will anyway, because as Oscar Wilde said, the only thing I cannot resist is temptation. So here we go. Artificial intelligence. We got 45 years. Of course, you know, I don't know about you, but I'll be geezing pretty heavy in another 50 years, 45 years or so, right? But I'll still be viable, as will you. And the thing is they're talking about all this artificial intelligence and robotics and everything else actually pushing people out of jobs. It's like that old Zager and Evans song about the year 2525, you know. It's over by then. But people are saying employment. I mean, and people say all kinds of outrageous things. I think most of the time it's just to attract attention to themselves. But how big a threat, as you look into the future, if you're doing the Joseph Meyer science fiction kind of analysis of the future, how big a threat to an individual's ability to make a living, given the level of education available now without really trying to get some serious education?
Okay.
You know, if you take tech is on the rise and the human being's ability to do things seems to be on the decline, and there's this cry for, at least from some sectors, fairly significant sized ones, for government, please take care of us, provide us with our job, make us feel better and all that. It's almost like in 45 years, we're liable to turn into the Eloi out of H.G. Wells' Time Machine, you know, where we're just useless little blobs of protoplasmic material that the Morlocks feast on every once in a while. But other than that, the big unseen government takes care of everything, and it's all run by AI. I mean, does that seem like where humanity is headed? Because these machines are getting quite a bit of traction.
Well, I think, quite frankly, there's no time in history and all through humanity when a man's ability to earn a living and take care of his family has been more threatened, John. You know, having said that, automation is a wonderful thing, but when it threatens the livelihood of the average American and he's unable to support his family, I think automation, quite frankly, in my humble opinion, has gone too far. We got to get back, and I want to say what I think is important as to when a man gives his word and his honesty and integrity and the truth as he speaks, it matters, truly has meaning and value in the workplace. And we've gotten so far away from that, it no longer does. John, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you completely, and understanding that I think it's a Russian proverb, with lies we can go forward, but there is no going back. So
No.
so as much as I would like to go back, I mean, that's just really a figure of speech now, but the only thing we can go back to is a sense of ethics. And as you say, your word is your bond, and you give somebody your word and you keep it. But this is what I'm wondering. Let's take this one company.
Okay.
This one company out there, and people will figure out who I'm talking about pretty quick, maybe. But here's the thing. They decided, well, look, I'll do it this way. I know. We're going to do the Meyer and Wells Automotive Monopoly, Incorporated. Because, you know, Chevy is selling more than Ford, but you know, Dodge is really kind of on the rise. People are really starting to like that a lot. And I know what we'll do is we'll buy all three automakers. We'll buy Chevy, we'll buy GM, we'll buy Chrysler, and we'll buy Ford. That way, we're just competing with ourselves, see? So it doesn't matter which truck is more popular, because we'll be competing with ourselves. What we don't realize is that we have one winner out of the group. We have effectively one asset, and we have two liabilities. Okay?
Well, that's the idea, John.
Keep
Do
going.
you remember in the 1950s when they accused the manufacturers of conspiring to fix the price of a toaster in the 1950s?
No, that was a little before my time, but not much.
So, you know, when you talk about how devious and how corrupt corporate America can be and what they'll do to turn a buck into a profit, I mean, it's just, it's unbelievable, John, how far this country's gone down the drain.
But what kind of thinking is this, Joseph, when you buy known liabilities? No, you buy a group of companies that they all do the same thing. And you know, some of them are going to be winners, and they're going to be way fewer winners than losers, but you buy the losers also so that you can just compete with yourself. I mean, what kind of thinking is this?
Well, it's thinking that leads to big problems, and we're seeing them, as I'm sure you'll agree, through all facets of society. That's the end result of this.
Okay, so where I'm headed with this is, what happens to a market when the people are not producing the products? They are not employed. They are on the government dole. Well, if they're on the government dole of subsidies, 12 weeks of vacation, maternity leave, you know, headache leave, whatever, it's really easy because you've got all this AI and all this futuristic automation handling everything for you. Well, doesn't that sort of phase out maybe permanently the consumer? If you don't have, how can you consume if you don't produce?
Well, you know, I've said many times when people have questioned me exactly about that, and I said, you've got to understand, promises are made to be broken and lies are made to be upheld. And we've gone down this road so far, John, I don't think there's any turning back, quite frankly.
I wouldn't mind if you amplified that a little bit if you feel like it, because I want people to get this. We're going to live through this. You know, most of us have got, you know, quite a good number of years left, and we're going to have to deal with this. And I'm just wondering how, I don't know what we're preparing for. It's almost like we're preparing for a void of some sort.
We are preparing for changes that are inevitable that a lot of us are not going to like. I think there's many things we can do, many things we should do, but as I've said many times again in the shows we've done together, You have to have a plan and a plan of action and take care of your family and certainly prepare for the difficult period and times that I think are ahead. You know, everybody thinks that this is an ending rather than a beginning. I wish I could say that, John. I think we're seeing the early elements of what is ahead for this country, and it's not good.
All right. Well, for every problem, there is a solution out there somewhere.
Absolutely.
And I'm just wondering, I've been hearing about this bank, this gold-backed bank that they're putting together. They may have already put it together in Dubai. I'm looking for it right now because I wanted to bring, gold-backed currency launches in Dubai. Kind of makes a strong case for you saying, I mean, I'm paraphrasing you, and correct me if the paraphrase is incorrect, but it's like, don't throw all of your eggs into one basket, but it's not a bad idea to have some silver and gold laying around. And this thing says, new gold-backed currency, 1 gram launched. It's called 1 gram. Backed by 1 gram of gold, uses blockchain technology. 1 gram is the first in a wave of new Sharia tech-savvy gold products. S-H-A-R-I-A-H, I think that's Sharia.
Yes, it is.
2017 sees big changes for gold thanks to Sharia gold and blockchain. Gold investors should prepare for tightening in supply. Bitcoin and Sharia gold demand suggest change in retail investor thinking. Can I ask you what your thoughts might be on this?
Well, you know, again, we're seeing changes, and they're happening very rapidly in the monetary system and through all governments of the world. China, India, Russia, as I've said in previous shows, continue to buy gold and silver and buy very, very heavily. If you go back and you study history, John, and I'm somewhat of a historian, certainly when you talk about the markets and you talk about what has taken place over many, many decades, many different cycles, many expansionary, many contractionary phases of the economy. People don't want to believe gold has a role in the monetary system, and, you know, they're welcome to that belief if that's what makes them feel good. But I think if you go back and you look at history, every civilization known to mankind at some point was anchored by gold. If you go all the way back to the dynasties in 1600 in China, gold was a very important ingredient of not only their economy, their culture as well. So I do believe gold is going to have a role as we move forward. Maybe we don't see that role as quickly as a lot of people would like it to happen, but inevitably I believe it will. I'm very leery of Bitcoin. I'm very leery of these new ways in which to own gold and be part of the monetary system as it evolves and it makes its changes. I don't believe, in my humble opinion, John, there's ever going to be a substitute for taking possession of your physical gold and silver. You know, maybe I'm old school and, you know, I'm old in my ways, but I'm of the belief if you're not in possession of your gold and silver, quite frankly, you don't own it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the asking price on gold today is it's down almost $6. It's like at $12.69 and 0.12. So it looks like instead of going back to the future, we're going forward into the past.
Well, you know, I want to mention quickly, because I know you've got listeners that are disappointed that gold hasn't done certainly far more than it's been able to over the last couple of years. If you go back to the beginning of the bull market in gold in 1970, roughly $35 an ounce. Took 9 years, John, to go from 35 to 200, but only 7 months to go to 850. So the point being, you know, gold can move very slowly, and at some point it starts an acceleration and goes certainly far, far higher than anyone can believe it's possible of doing in a very, very short time. So I think, again, if you go back and you look at the bull market that we had witnessed in the 70s, and you look at this bull market that's continuing to unfold as we move forward, the greatest gains in gold and silver are not behind us, John. They're still in front of us. We are being given, in my opinion, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to buy gold and silver at these prices. We're never going to see these price levels again in our lifetime, John. You can bet on it.
And I should point out, you don't sell gold or silver, do you?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I don't sell stock and bonds either. I don't sell any securities. I sell my knowledge, my wisdom, my experience, and I put it in the form of a newsletter to my subscribers. I sell wisdom, knowledge, experience, track record. That's what we sell, John. And having been in these markets 50 years.
All right. So I just want to cover this again because it's been several weeks since we've spoken. So now you're not offering financial advice. It's just Joseph and John B having a chat here, and there's a few hundred thousand of our closest friends listening over there. They listen to us. We're at a booth in Edina. Are you thinking, last time we spoke, you were thinking about, I'll have the liver and onions. If you know how to cook it, it's really good. Slow. Always cook the liver slow. Do not cook liver quickly. It's unpalatable. Stay away from, you think it maybe hold off on buying the big Sky Ranch, the big 8-bedroom house, kind of wait on that a little bit. Housing prices may come down.
I think the housing bubble, when it unfolds the next time, is going to be very, very severe, John. I think the economy is showing the early signs of recession. Fed is determined to raise interest rates, which, quite frankly, at this point, I don't think is justified. But, then again, they have a history of raising rates at the worst time for the wrong reasons. I think the economy is slowing, and I think you touched on it earlier. Automotive is in trouble. You go to a car dealership, they got more cars on the lot than I've ever seen, John. I don't know who's going to buy these cars, but it's not going to be working class America, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a guy, he's a Mexican guy, and he's got a car dealership. He advertised on the radio. He's got a really thick Mexican accent, man. He's like this. He got more BMW than a BMW dealership. We got more Mercedes-Benz than a Mercedes-Benz dealership. We got more Chevys than a Chevy dealership. He actually says Chevy. And I'm thinking to myself, I better go check this guy out. And you know what? He does have more BMWs, Mercedes, and Chevys and Fords than any dealership around here. It's absolutely outrageous. So I'm just wondering, these really nice-looking dealerships that they've set up, I wonder if they're going to go the way of the malls. I understand within the next few years, up to 25% of the malls are going to close and become something else, not malls anymore. So...
Well, John, the malls have been dying, as I'm sure you'll agree, for quite some time. I think this economy is far worse than the economic statistics we're being given and certainly what we're being told in the media. The consumer, on balance, is just tapped out, John. He can't spend. He can't spend what he doesn't have, and he can't spend what he doesn't earn. This is a very unique time. I've never seen prices on any commodity or anything we buy on a daily basis higher. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. And I'm wondering about something. These interest rates. Let's go back in the past just a little bit.
Okay.
I can remember when 9, maybe 10% on a mortgage, on a home mortgage, was pretty normal.
It was.
Yeah, forget about the Jimmy Carter days when it was like 18 to 22%. That was totally ridiculous. And, the housing market was pretty stagnant in the 70s. But you could still pick up a good deal because the prices were low, but the dollar was worth more and the interest rates were high. So typically when it comes to mortgages, what causes interest rates to go up on mortgages? Is it the value of the dollar? Is it greed? Is it the Fed? I mean, what is it that drives interest rates up? I mean, they're ridiculously low now. They've been like triple before, and it was fairly normal.
All of the things you mentioned play a very important role in the level interest rates obtained. But, when our parents bought their home and they financed it, and financing wasn't that easy to get in the 50s. You had to be credit worthy. Banks weren't putting money into homes unless you had the ability to certainly demonstrate repayment. But when you look at the mortgages our parents paid on a home, which you go back and you look at the price, $15,000, $20,000. I mean, you can't even buy a decent car today for that. But the point being, Houses used to go up by the rate of inflation about 4 or 5% a year, John. Mortgages were pegged pretty much to that inflation rate on balance as we got through the 50s and in the early and mid 1960s. Things didn't really start to get crazy till the late 1970s and the early 1980s. That's when things really got out of hand, John.
Yeah.
You know, the American dream is for everyone to own a home, and it's a wonderful thing if you can own a home and you can afford it. But when you look at the affordability of housing today and you look at the ability of what people can borrow to put down and certainly be able to live in a home for a number of years and pay off a mortgage, it's just unattainable at these levels, John. That's why I think housing is headed for a big fall. Again, not a question of if, question of when. But I think when it starts down, we're going to see levels worse than we saw on the last bus at the bottom, John. I really do.
So I've been popping off a little bit about, as I usually do, about things like these commercials that I heard for a long time. This is back around 2007. It pretty much stopped in 2008. But for 2006 and 7, it was like 0% financing with no employment verification, 0% financing 20 minutes out of bankruptcy, 0% financing, let it rip, you know. And then I thought to myself, as I listened to all these commercials, I thought, you know what, something's going to pop. And it did. So by the same mental measuring stick, when you hear commercials and they say things like, of course, some of the commercials can't help but take advantage of this offer now before the president does something. I mean, even they're trying to play on the fears that Donald Trump is going to jack your mortgage rates up. I mean, they're just idiots. But anyway, that's the ad business. But they say the value of your home doubles about every 20 years. And I say, yeah, that's because your money's worth about half every 20 years. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Good. Good. I hate to just run my mouth and say stuff that's not true or that's stupid. I just want to avoid that. You know what I mean? Maybe I can stay in business a little longer if I don't say too many things that are stupid. All right. Well, no crank calls anymore in the middle of the night, but it was great to be able to call you. I know you're down in beautiful Florida. And look, I think this is going to be really good. Folks, let me just say this. And Joseph, I want you to step in and correct me if I'm wrong, okay?
Oh, don't worry, I will.
They ran a commercial. Speaking of commercials, they ran one back a long time ago. But you know, if you get up in my demographic, a long time ago was like 15 minutes ago, like when John Densmore, the Doors drummer, said, well, I'm going to be 70 in about 15 minutes. I totally understand what he means by that. A commercial was run on television, and the narrator says, investing in the stock market is easy. Making money at it isn't. And I thought, I don't think it was a very good idea to say that. And that commercial, I never saw it run again. So understanding what's happening to you financially. I mean, I'm putting in a plug for Joseph's newsletter right now, Straight Money Analysis, because it is complicated. And sometimes, I mean, people's attention spans are rather short. They want to move on to something more interesting, got a little more flash, you know, just something that'll get the juice going a little better than like sitting in a lecture hall, for example, and just listening to somebody drone on and on about something that's a required course. They don't really want to take it. It's a required course, but they're in the lecture hall. Don't let that be what this comes off as to you. Understanding how these markets work is not easy. It does require some study. Joseph studies it. He reports on it. You read it. And it's based on, what do you say? I'm going to say it, a half century's worth of experience. He's the only one that we'd ever partner with, that we've ever partnered with to do such a thing as launch a promotion like this. I remind you, our membership here at Caravan has tripled in the last year. We're doing this because we want to pull as many people into the light as possible while there's still time to do it. And that's why Joseph and Miss B have come up with this extraordinary thing. And it's $80 for 1 year. It's a 1-year subscription to Caravan. And how many newsletters? They're going to get 3 of them. They're going to get the March, the June, and the September, did you say?
September 2017 as an added bonus, John. Yes, they are 3 newsletters they're going to receive.
You cannot beat this deal with your Ray Donovan edition baseball bat. You can't beat it. So, look, thanks very much for working with us and putting this thing together, Joseph.
It's a pleasure to be part of what you're doing with Caravan and Midnight. No one believes more, and certainly what you stand for than I do, John. And hopefully we can educate and enlighten a lot of people to make some good, hard-earned decisions with their money, and certainly be able to maneuver and work their way through the difficult times that I know are ahead of us. But at the end of the tunnel, there's going to be a day of light, and we certainly want to all be there to take advantage of it when it happens, John.
Beautiful words. Thanks a lot, Joseph. Talk again soon, all right?
Thank you so much for having me, John. It's been a pleasure as always. Thanks, John.
You're welcome. Thank you. Joseph Meyer, everybody, remember. What is it Mickey said in the movie Snatch? It's a good deal, so take it. All right. If you're watching this program on YouTube, you know what to do. There's the link. Click. You'll see all the appropriate banners, all the appropriate directions. We're going to get it on quick. And by the way, if you go, well, you know, this Caravan to Midnight is pretty radical stuff. Not sure I want the NSA knowing that I'm watching the program. The NSA knows what color toilet paper you have in your bathroom there and what kind of toothpaste you use. Don't worry about it. But if you are privacy-minded, just send a check or money order. We don't wait for it to clear. The moment that it shows up, it goes to the office punches in your subscription, and it's a done deal, okay? We'll worry about it clearing later. That's just how we roll. Somebody wants to, like, screw us over, as the expression goes. Well, that's on them, isn't it? Not on us. All right. I love you, people. Have I told you that lately? Well, I do. So click the link and join us and get that deal. $80 for a year. 1 year subscription to Caravan. 3 big newsletters written by Joseph Meyer himself. He doesn't farm it out. He does it himself. This is what he does. Okay? Okay. Stand by.